Good morning. How are you doing? Right then, today I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to be talking about getting out of my comfort zone, or to make it more dramatic, the danger of the midlife comfort zone. And I wanted to talk about this today, actually, because it's been one of the biggest things that's improved my motivation over the past few years, past year or so. And it's helped me with two areas that are particularly difficult, which I know people on the program will also resonate with, and that is conquering cravings and just this constant pull towards nice things, and also challenging yourself physically. Okay. Now, just to give you a little bit of context, my backstory was I knew a lot about nutrition. I had what I would describe as a healthy diet. I took exercise regularly. I was generally active, but I was gaining weight. I was overweight. My fitness wasn't really changing. I was noticing some things actually in my body that were getting weaker. My grip strength, for example, I had this gorgeous, probably quite valuable, but I couldn't find a price for it, this enormous antique plate of my auntie's. And I used to be able to pick it up with one hand, and I couldn't. I picked it up and I dropped it and it just smashed into loads of pieces. So yeah, I was gutted about that. But the little things like that I noticed, that I could do before with no problem. So despite doing everything, I wasn't progressing. I wasn't moving forwards. And I got to a point where I realized that I was stuck. And also realized that I wasn't very happy. Now, I don't mean happy with my body. I mean in myself. Okay. And just to qualify that, body happy, my whole relationship with my body has completely changed. And I think that'll probably become evident as I go through this as well. And I just want to say that I think that's just like a really important aspect of it, because I definitely wasn't unhappy with my body, but there was just something that was just feeling off, and I was quite apathetic. Now, you all know that I am a very big believer in the power of journaling. And when I really sort of start to, we don't always notice these things, do we? But when I started to really sort of notice that feeling and latch onto it and realize that things were off, and I sort of couldn't understand why, then the journal came out, the pencil came out, and I started writing and I started digging into what was going on. And what I realized was that I had got very comfortable. And I would go so far as describing that as lazy as well. And I didn't know what to do with myself. Obviously, I could keep myself busy. I had a job. I was always on standby in case Lucia ever needed anything, if you can call that busy. But and there's always jobs in the house and garden and all the rest of it, but I don't count that. But I was just lazy and didn't know what to do with myself for me. I also was starting to become quite negative. And I noticed I was just always thinking in terms of how stressed I was and how hard things were. And I kept finding that the word struggle was something that was coming into my mind. Everything felt like a struggle and an effort. But actually, my life was easy, and no one's life is easy. And I don't mean that, but it was very familiar. I wasn't being pushed. I wasn't challenged by anything. Yes, there were things that were hard, but mostly they were things that just bugged me. So the stress comes from an almost like annoyance and discontentment with things, rather than any real sense that I was growing or stretching or being stretched or challenged in a positive, like, growth way. Okay. And I was becoming quite passive. I relied on other people to decide what we were doing. I would rather sit back and do nothing and wait for someone else to say something, and wouldn't go first and make it, be assertive with word. And I started to notice another pattern that, when when I felt any sort of discomfort, was bored, stressed, overwhelmed, the list goes on of like negative feelings, frustration. I was in the kitchen looking for something to eat. And your life goes in cycles, doesn't it? There can be some weeks when everything's fantastic and tickety-boo, and then the next week it's all driving you mad. So, I didn't spend my life eating, but that was a go-to as soon as that sort of intensity of that stuck and frustratedness sort of came. And even if I wasn't just sat there going through a pack of biscuits on my knee in front of the TV in the afternoon, which I wasn't, that wasn't my pattern. I was constantly in and around the kitchen looking for something and then trying not to have it and just having one. And the sort of type of behavior that sort of really creeps up and takes over your whole day to either, just thinking and fighting that urge. And that's all you actually end up focusing on, that sort of urge to eat and not eat. And, so I did some journaling, like I say, and what happened as a result of that, I didn't expect this to be the outcome, but that's the great thing about journaling. You just sort of start writing and you just see what happens. But as a way, through that process, I just got this really strong, vivid mental picture of a woman who was just sat on the sofa eating because she was too resistant to get out of her comfort zone. And that was me. Now, that was who I'd become. That was who I was becoming. And the minute I could see that picture, well, I was quite shocked because I realized, what if I didn't take steps to change this, what's going to happen? Was I just going to sit there and fester for a few years and get worse and worse? And, I was so shocked by that image because that's not how I saw myself. I saw myself as a positive, upbeat, hardworking person who could do hard things. But the reality of it, I was heading in a different direction. I was sat on the sofa wondering what had few enough calories in for me to go and eat that wouldn't make me feel guilty because I couldn't think of it, because I couldn't think of anything else to do. And, weekends could be very deeply unsatisfactory. I'd be sort of, desperate for a weekend and then be in a foul mood for most of them. So I could see where I was heading all of a sudden, and realizing that and seeing that so clearly gave me a real, almost instant shot of motivation, which I really needed. And the thing that I knew, this is when some insights are really powerful, when almost you can nail them in a few words. And I knew I had to get out of my comfort zone. And that just became a very small, simple phrase that I could latch onto that had an enormous sense of meaning that I could apply to so many different situations. But importantly, I could call on that phrase very easily in any moment. And this picture of this very pathetic woman sat on a sofa eating, and that would be a very powerful way for me to either change my behavior or do something that I was feeling some resistance to do. And I was chatting to a client last night, actually, and we were talking about her mother-in-law, and she was just recognizing this woman who was in her 80s, and she'd had lots of kids and lots of grandchildren, but she'd practically cut herself off from everything apart from her children and her grandchildren. I'm guessing she was widowed. We didn't talk about it in that much detail, but she had no life of her own and was totally dependent on her family for any entertainment, company, etc. And I wondered if she had been through a similar stage at this time of life where, she'd spent decades being very focused on her children or looking after the house. I don't know whether she had a career, but it could apply to someone who had a career. And then suddenly our world changes, and the people who need us change or don't need us anymore. And we can just feel lost. And, we go from never having a minute to ourselves to not knowing what to do with ourselves. And that's where I think I was. And it is quite pertinent then that you think about that forward picture and project, because you start to understand the stakes, what's at stake if you don't make a change to your life. And one of the things that I see very, very commonly is, as I experienced, this very strong link between that sense of not knowing what to do with yourself, I'm feeling a bit lost, and eating habits. Yeah. And that causes problems because, one, we end up eating too much, or we're having all this mental noise with this battle with food that we're having. But two, we're not living a life that we're happy with or that's fulfilling us. And that's the big problem. And we tend to just focus on the food aspect of it, thinking, I've got no willpower, I need to stop eating all this stuff at weekends or in the evening. But really, we should be thinking, how do I reclaim my life? How do I make some more time for me? How do I pursue something that makes me feel happy, gives me purpose, gives me motivation to get up in the day, gives me a different outlook? That's where we need to be. And that's, for me, what getting out of my comfort zone was really about at the end of the day. And, the other part of getting out of your comfort zone. So what one thing is about, I guess, it's about moving. It's about action rather than sitting stuck or hovering, not knowing what to do with yourself. It's about taking action, about movement. And I translated this into physical movement and, got into running, cycling. This is a process that goes on for a few years. It's not just like a linear thing, but getting involved with more activities outside and getting more into that. And, that's really important, I think, anyway. As a PT, I'm going to have a very strong opinion about this. And, this is that aspect of movement and getting over our resistance to move, which I've told you to lots of, and I have. I read somewhere that humans are hardwired to want to be comfortable and want to not move. We would normally be going and chasing down something and catching it or doing all the work associated with that, and then we rest and recover until the next time. But modern life isn't like that. So we are hardwired to want to do nothing. So we have to all work quite hard to overcome that natural gravitation or that pull towards being comfortable all the time. And like I say, it's been a huge thing for me to literally get up out the chair, out the house, out the kitchen and start doing things. And as I've sort of got into that a little bit more, that's changed my attitude to workouts. I'll talk about that in another time. But, we've got to be honest here and realize that we have to be prepared to continually challenge ourselves forever, because that's, our body has a use it or lose it policy, and that's how our body responds to keep it strong and functional. And there's, we know this is absolute knowledge and truth that we know as we age, we'll lose strength, we'll lose power, we lose balance, we lose speed. We also become more resistant to the uptake of protein, which means we're not taking up the nutrients from our food to repair and rebuild our body. And the only strategy that we have that exists to really address that natural decline is to increase the amount of stimulus that we're putting on our body through exercise and eating more protein. The two things work together. So the other aspect of getting out of your comfort zone is also about getting out of your comfort zone physically. Yeah. And getting more involved with that whole process of what a physical journey would be. And, that can go, we're all different. I know there's some people in the group who've got some very exciting long-term physical challenges to do, and others that, do more short-term, regular sort of, endurance running and things like that. But, we're all different and we're all our own people. So it is about what our own journey to keep putting that stimulus on our body is and what that means. But it does require getting out of your comfort zone, because again, we have this tolerance, we have this fear or aversion to discomfort. And let's face it, exercise feels uncomfortable, to get out of breath, to feel joints creaking, muscles burning is not nice. You could be sat watching TV or making something nice to eat, and instead you're sort of doing something that doesn't feel very nice. But we have to do that because that's a way of pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. And I can work with you all individually to sort of look at how we develop, physical performance goals, etc., over time. But it is a really important thing. And what I would say is, as I have got more into that, it's completely changed my relationship with my body. And I went from someone who was deeply self-conscious about what I look like for years. I mean, just the amount of time I know I've wasted on these things is just tragic. But it's about appreciating what it can do, but also tuning into how it feels and looking after myself. I've been to the physio this week. My knee was swelling up after I was running. So I'm not ignoring these things. I'm getting them looked at and getting them addressed. I'm accepting that these things are going to happen, but I'm not using it as an excuse to stop. I'm just learning what I need to do now to look after myself, to keep going. So it's very much about appreciating what I can do. It's very much about looking after what I can do, looking after, what I can do to look after my body with how I move, what my exercise is, what I eat, how I sleep, etc. Okay. And also it's had a hugely transformative effect on my relationship with food, which again, from being someone who was stuck in that sort of constant dieting world of counting calories and, the sort of, we all grew up in the same decades of that sort of ridiculous pressure to be thin and look like a supermodel. We've probably all got a dysfunctional relationship with food to some degree after that. But really, rather than using food as a way to control weight to look thinner because that's the fashion or that's what society says looks better, it's about having a relationship with food which is helping me perform better with my exercises, get uphill better on a cycle, recover better, build muscle, etc. Okay. So they're two things that have been sort of really powerful for me to start to think about how I essentially, use midlife as a bit of a springboard to reinvent myself. I was going to say become a different person. I don't know if I would go that far, but certainly reinventing myself, because I see that we have a golden opportunity now to do things for ourselves now while we have got the health, we don't have the dependency in the same way, and the freedom and the right, after doing so much for other people for so long, to go off and do things for ourselves. But that whole thing is stepping out of our comfort zone. But as I say, I think when we are on the cusp of that change, it can feel quite uncomfortable, and a sign of that can be eating, and wanting to eat and looking to eat. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about as well, because it's not all about food and exercise, it's also about your mind and just doing things for yourself just for the sheer pleasure. And other ways to get out of your comfort zone are learning how to be open to things like doing creative pursuits, getting back into old hobbies, maybe finding new ones, or being open to try new things, learning a language, volunteering, maybe you want to build a new career or a new charity or whatever. There's all sorts of things, but it's about something that is just for you, for your enjoyment, for your pleasure, for your satisfaction. And again, that can just feel really weird because we've spent years doing things for other people. When I was a kid, I could sit and draw in bed till 4 o'clock in the morning. I just would be lost in my own little world of drawing things. And now I've got a huge resistance to picking up a pencil and a pad, and it feels like a waste of time. It feels like a waste of time. But so there's it's, but when we were younger, we wouldn't have thought anything of those. I have to laugh with people who've got teenage daughters. My daughter can spend a whole day with a face mask on, or waxing something, or dyeing something, and come out of there looking like $1 million, and she just spent a whole day doing it, looking after herself. So yeah, but the point is, it's about doing things that again stimulate us mentally, and I really think there is a balance between finding things that we enjoy doing, and when we have that right, then and we've got that balance right, then and part of that process is about the physical aspect as well, and doing things physically and being prepared to move and take action. Then I think that starts to almost sort the relationship with food out itself. So the priorities are the being fulfilled, doing things that feed our soul more than anything else, taking care of our body, and then the food starts to take care of itself. That's very much where I'm getting to on my journey. And what I want to say is that to say that it is a journey, and I don't think for 1 minute, or I don't view myself for 1 minute of having this sewn up and have cracked it. There's lots of things. I'm an introvert. I find it quite hard to socialize and sort of meet people outside of more formal work settings. So there's things I am conscious of that I'm working towards. But I think I'm happy that it's a journey, and all I think now is that what's good enough for me is that I'm aware of this whole idea of getting out my comfort zone, and I'm really dialed into it. I notice when I'm staying in my comfort zone, and I can use that to just push myself out, whatever it is. I also notice, and this has taken a bit more effort, when those feelings of really intense discomfort that would normally have me run into the kitchen are actually a sign that I am challenging myself in a healthy way, and that there will be a reward on the other side, because that discomfort I'm feeling is part of me challenging myself, me pushing myself out my comfort zone, and there's sort of growth on the other side. And that bit's a little bit harder and has required a little bit more of a leap of faith, because the natural tendency when you don't feel comfortable is to focus on how uncomfortable that discomfort feels and almost talk yourself back out of it instead of pushing through. But as I said before, having that really simple mantra of getting out of my comfort zone, I can just sort of bring that up whenever I need it, and when I recognize that I need it, and remind myself of what I'm trying to do. And, just lastly, I want to say that I am actually going really gently with this. And this is a process. It's a journey. There's days when I take steps forward and I feel really proud of myself of what I've done. And then there's other days where I just can't get my act together and I just sort of really struggle feeling uncomfortable again. And I sort of probably fall backwards or whatever. But I am really good, credit where it's due, I don't mind, at being kind to myself throughout this whole process, because I know what I'm doing is hard and I'm okay with that. I'm breaking a mold. I'm transitioning out of one phase of my life into another one. I've got no idea what I'm doing or where I'm half the time, most of the time. But the point is I'm trying, and I'm open to all of these things. Because what I know is that what doesn't work is adding more external pressure. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. It's not about any external pressure. It's about connecting with what's inside of me, what I want for myself now, and just being able to tune into that and understand what that is and listen to it, and then have the courage to get out of my own way and act on it. And that's what the sort of how I bring myself forward, rather than feel the pressure to go forward for a different reason. So I hope that is something that helps you, that resonates, that you can maybe see that as part of a bigger story or a bigger context around why sometimes we struggle with exercise, why sometimes we struggle with our food. And yes, very happy as always to chat about that with you in your one-to-ones if you feel that that's going to be helpful and you want to explore what that might mean for you. But yes, I think it's all fascinating to me, this sort of whole process, this whole journey. And I like the fact that we're all sharing it together as well. Right, I'm going to leave it there. You have a great day, and I know I'll speak to you all very soon. All right, bye for now.